guys, how y'all doing? Welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be filming my August wrap up. This is going up a bit later than I would have liked, but it's fine. I read a lot of books in August. I read 16 books in August. This is the most that I've ever read in a month, I think, ever, and that's all due to I went on a 2-week long road trip that I've talked about quite a few times now on my channel, but it was a 2-week long road trip. We were in the car for a very long time. I had a lot of downtime to read while we're in the car. I also listened to a few audiobooks and I did get some reading done before and after the trip. There's a lot of books to talk about, so let's just get right into it. The first book that I want to talk about, I actually don't have a lot to say about it, but it is the Anne of Green Gables graphic novel. This is by Mariah Marsden and illustrated by Brenna Thumler. This was a really enjoyable graphic novel. It was a relatively good adaptation of the novel, and overall the artwork was pretty cute, except for the faces. The faces weren't my favorite thing, especially the noses. They look a little odd. But overall it was quite adorable. I obviously love the story of Anne of Green Gables, so I really enjoyed reading it in a different medium than I'm used to. And it was just like a really cool way to take in and digest the story, so I really enjoyed this one, and I gave it a 4.75 out of 5 stars. Okay, so the next book that I read was The Becoming of Noah Shaw by Michelle Hodkin. Okay, so in July I finally finished rereading The Retribution of Mara Dyer, and so I decided to pick this one up because if I didn't pick it up right away then I would not end up finishing it ever. So I picked it up, and unfortunately I was relatively let down by this novel. Not like I had high hopes surrounding it because I had heard fairly mixed reviews on it. So I was slightly nervous. I didn't go into it with super high expectations, but unfortunately I was disappointed. I found the story to be a bit boring up until around the last maybe 30 to 50 pages of the book. While I did enjoy the characters, some of them felt not authentic to themselves. They just felt a little off, and I find this a lot when series continue or get a spin-off of sorts when it wasn't originally planned to be that way. Mara Dyer was supposed to be a trilogy. The story wasn't supposed to continue, and she decided to continue it with Noah Shaw. And I feel like when authors tend to do that, it just doesn't feel the same, and so I really felt that with this one, that they just didn't necessarily feel the same, especially coming right out of The Retribution of Mara Dyer, jumping into this one. They were so fresh in my head and I could instantly feel that something was off and different. So something that I really didn't enjoy about the story or the characters' interactions was Mara and Noah, especially at the beginning of the book, were only thinking about sex, and it felt like there was nothing left in their relationship besides sex. And that really bothered me because for all of the main trilogy, I really loved the connection that they had. I really loved all the interactions they had with each other. And then they had sex at the end of Retribution of Mara Dyer, which is fine and dandy, but it felt like it overtook their relationship in this book, and I felt like that's all they cared about, that's all they were doing, and their relationship wasn't actually good. Besides that, like outside of sex, it felt like they didn't really have anything going for themselves and they were fighting, and it made my heart sad, and I didn't like the way that their relationship was developing. So like all in all, this book just felt like filler content. Like it was just bridging a gap between what happens in The Retribution of Mara Dyer and what's going to happen in The Reckoning of Noah Shaw, which comes out sometime in November. Something about this book just fell off and I didn't really enjoy it. I'm a little disappointed with this spin-off trilogy because I love the main trilogy, and I don't want it to wreck that main trilogy at all, and I'm scared that it will. I gave this book a 3 out of 5, unfortunately. I'm very sad about it. And then I listened to an audiobook. I listened to Finding Audrey by Sophie Kinsella. This was a very impromptu read. I had no intentions of reading this book anytime soon, or really at all. Like, I've seen it around on BookTube ever since it came out, and I've heard, I think, mixed reviews about it, but I was like intrigued because it deals with anxiety, which is something that I feel very strongly about, and I want to read more books featuring anxiety representation. So, I don't know, but I saw it on the Overdrive app and I just downloaded it and I was like, yes, let's just go for it. And I really enjoyed this book. Like, I am so happy that I downloaded it and listened to it because I was in love, and like, I really liked the narrator. She had such a cool British voice and it was amazing. But I was able to relate to our main character Audrey on many levels, specifically with her anxiety. Not necessarily to the extent that she has it, but I could relate to the feeling of anxiety, and I really enjoy when I can relate to characters in books because it makes them feel more real and I can enjoy them and connect to them more than if I don't relate to them in some sort of way. And it also allows me to understand the character more. If I was reading this and didn't have any experience with anxiety, I wouldn't understand what the big deal is, you know what I mean? So going through anxiety allowed me to be able to connect and understand Audrey in a way that some other person who doesn't deal with this disorder might not be able to understand. So I have some feelings on the characters. Overall, I enjoyed them all. I really enjoyed her little brother Felix. I thought that he was pretty adorable. I didn't really like the mom, however. I slightly blame the narrator for this because whenever the mom would yell, there was a certain way that she spoke when she was reading the mom yelling, and it just heightened it way more than I think it should have. Honestly, she kind of reminded me of Umbridge. She kind of reminded me of Umbridge in the way that she yelled, especially in the way that the narrator voiced her. It didn't help that she has a British accent because this is set in the UK, and so she has a British accent, and it really sounded like Umbridge, and once I got that thought into my mind, I couldn't get it out, and I feel like that added to my hatred of her, and I probably wouldn't have hated her as much if I just read it physically, but also she was very annoying. I felt like she was just overreacting with a lot of things, especially regarding her son Frank. Like, she was just getting so annoyed, so angry, and it felt like it was uncalled for, and she didn't try to understand where her son was coming from and what he was going through, and she just had a total disregard for what he liked and what he wanted to do, which I really didn't agree with or like. In the end, she did have some character development. She did come through, and I ended up liking her more in the end than I did in the beginning and in the middle, which was nice. But the relationship between our main character Audrey and her brother's best friend Linus was pretty adorable. I quite enjoyed it. I did enjoy that they had little challenges for Audrey to do to kind of improve upon her anxiety and overcome it a little bit. I really enjoyed how supportive he was of her and how accepting he was of her, and I liked how they always passed back notes because that's easier than physically talking face to face, and I liked the overall development within the relationship and how it helped Audrey overcome the anxiety more and more, and it was just really sweet and wholesome, and I really enjoyed their relationship. I ended up giving this one a 4 out of 5 stars. I really quite enjoyed it. Then I picked up Save the Date by Morgan Matson. So if you guys know, Morgan Matson is my favorite author, definitely my favorite contemporary author, and so I was really, really excited for this book. I'm slightly disappointed by it. This is my least favorite of her books. Pains me to say it. It pains me to say it. So this book just didn't feel like a Morgan Matson book. I mean that in the sense that it wasn't as romance heavy as her other books are. Her other books have a good balance between friendships and family and romance, and this one I felt like didn't have that. I felt like it focused more on family than on the relationship, and I went into this book wanting to swoon and wanting to fangirl and wanting a cute relationship to ship and get excited about, and I didn't receive that, and I kept reading it and expecting for it to come up, and it just never did. The biggest problem with this book, however, is I feel like too many things went wrong. So this book is about a wedding and basically how everything that could go wrong does go wrong. But I feel like too many things went wrong, that it was a little unrealistic. The more things went wrong, the more unrealistic it felt to me. I feel like she should have just done a few things that went wrong, just enough to make it overwhelming and frustrating for the characters, and then focus more on the friendships and the relationship, because I also found the friendship to be lacking, because you never actually meet her friend, you only get to see her through the phone, and I wish we could have actually met her, or I wish we could have seen more of that friendship. So that was very disappointing, and I didn't like how everything literally everything went wrong and it was so unrealistic. So in regards to the relationship, there obviously was hints to a relationship. There was hints of feeling between Charlie, our main character, and this boy named Bill. There was obviously some attraction and some feelings there, particularly on Bill's side for most of the novel. And it was like kind of hinted at the end that they would get together eventually, but they never actually get together, and I was really hoping that we would at least get like a cute moment at the end where they were together, but we never got it. And I'm very disappointed by that because I love having cute relationships from Morgan Matson because she writes them so well, but it just lacked so much in this book. I also just didn't connect very well to the characters. I just didn't feel connected to them because there was so much chaos going on. Like I said earlier, I feel like if she just toned it down and just did a few things going wrong, she could have focused on the relationships more, which is the most important part, I feel like, of the story. And I know she can do it well, but I feel like she was so focused on the plot that she kind of forgot about the connections between the characters. And I didn't really care for anyone besides JJ. JJ is my everything. He is one of Charlie's brothers. I love him. I didn't really feel connected to any of the other characters. I don't care what happens to them. I don't really feel much for them. I didn't hate them. I just didn't necessarily love them as I normally do with Morgan Matson books. Overall, this was an enjoyable read. It just wasn't what I was wanting or expecting out of a Morgan Matson book. And so I feel like if this was written by somebody else, or if this was my first Morgan Matson book and I had no preconceived notions for what her books were like, I might enjoy it more because I know what to expect from her books, and I didn't get that with this one. It fell a little flat, and that could be unfair of me, but it's the truth. So I gave this one a 4 out of 5, but I did have a fun time reading it. It just wasn't a very, very strong book. Do you know what I mean? The next book was an audiobook, and I listened to this right before we left for the vacation. It was okay. So Mindy Kaling is an actress, comedian person. She has her own show, The Mindy Kaling, that is now over, unfortunately. I really love that show. But so because I love that show so much, I was like, yes, I want to read her books. And so I figured listening to them on audio would be the best way to go because I can hear it in her voice. And that was the most enjoyable part of this audiobook for me, was that I could hear her voice, because she has a very distinct voice and it's a very humorous voice, and I really quite enjoy it. But I don't really have anything to say about it. She has a very animated voice, that's what I meant to say. She has a very animated voice. But most of the time I was bored, and I didn't particularly care about what she was talking about, and I felt myself just like droning out. My enjoyment, however, did increase near the end of the book, because she started talking about the Mindy Project, which is kind of what I wanted her to talk about, and so I enjoyed that part of the audiobook. But the rest of it I didn't really care about, I didn't really connect to. Maybe if I was older, more of like a grown woman as opposed to a teenager, maybe I would have enjoyed and connected to it more. But yeah, so it was okay. If you like Mindy Kaling, I guess I'd recommend it. Maybe if you are older than 18. I don't know. And I also didn't want to rate this one because I didn't really have a rating. Okay, and thus begins the road trip books. The next book that I read is Girl Made of Stars by Ashley Herring Blake. Look at all the tabs in this one. A lot. I can't say that I enjoyed this book, and that's because the subject matter is so dark and serious that you can't really enjoy it. This isn't a book that you read for enjoyment per se. So instead of saying I enjoyed it, I'm just going to say that I'm really, really glad that I read it, because it's such an important story and an important book to read, especially for young girls who are struggling with the topics in this book, which is rape and sexual assault. Coming to terms with what has been done to you, and coming to terms with how to talk about it with not only yourself, but with other people. It's a very important book, so there's obviously trigger warnings for rape and sexual assault and all of that unfortunate stuff. So if you're triggered by any of that, then I do not recommend that you read this book. And what I really enjoyed about the story was it gave you different perspectives on a situation like this. So we not only got to see the point of view of the person who got assaulted and raped, but we got to see and learn and like hear about the situation and the experience from the rapist himself, what the families go through and what the friends go through. You can really see all the different sides of it, which I feel like is very, very important. And I think that rape and sexual assault and everything to do with those things need to be talked about more in society in an open and unjudging sort of way, because I feel like the reason that most girls and even men are afraid to talk about it and are afraid to be open about their experiences with sexual assault is because they believe that people won't believe them, and they will believe that, oh, why didn't you come out and like tell us when it happened? And that's dealt with in this book, with holding it in and not wanting to tell people. I really love the discussion of belief that was in this book, because people are often hesitant to believe, and they don't want to believe that someone is capable of that, especially if it's in their own life. They try to make up excuses because making excuses is easier than actually dealing with the truth of the matter. And that's definitely prevalent in this book, and you see that a lot within our main character's family. And what I love is that despite our main character Mara being the twin sibling of the rapist in the story, she believes her best friend Hannah when she finds out that her brother raped her. There is slight hesitation at the beginning where she's like, no, my brother couldn't have done that, but then she starts to slowly see that, oh yeah, he could have done that, and why would she lie about it? So she's kind of the only one in her family who is taking Hannah's side. But she doesn't like completely dismiss her brother either. Like, she's very conflicted and very confused, but she is 100% understanding and supportive of Hannah, which is really, really important. And it was mentioned in the story, and I feel like it's very important to mention this, but it said that it's hard to believe someone is capable of doing something so awful when they have no known history of acting that way. Because when it came out that her brother raped Hannah, everyone was like, well, he's never acted that way before, so why would he be acting that way now? And I feel like it's very important to acknowledge this. I think it's very important to understand that history in sexual assault is not necessary in order to be capable of committing rape. It's not necessary. It's not like there's a checklist of things that you need to have in order to rape somebody. And every rapist starts somewhere. They have to have a first time raping somebody. And so I hate that argument that, oh, they don't have a past or a history of being aggressive or raping somebody. So that obviously means that they aren't doing it now. And I hate that. I hate that so much. It makes no sense. But I guess people are just trying to make excuses, like I mentioned earlier, to make it easier on themselves rather than facing the truth. But yeah, this was a very, very important novel dealing with so many important topics, especially in society today with all of these sexual assaults coming to the surface that we're just now finding out about, especially in Hollywood specifically. It's very prevalent to our society today and what's going on in the news and everything like that. So this book deals with a lot of things like rape, sexuality, gender identity, and mental health with representation for panic attacks. I'm reading off of my review because I didn't want to get any of that wrong. I didn't want to miss anything. So yeah, this is a very important book, and I feel like if you can handle reading about rape and sexual assault, if you can deal with that, then I feel like everyone should read this. Everyone who can handle it should read this book because it's such an important story. I gave this one a 4.75 out of 5 stars. Then I read From Twinkle with Love by Sandy Eminon. This is kind of like the spin-off companion to When Dimple Met Rishi, which I read earlier this year and loved. So this one was enjoyable and fun, but I didn't love it as much as Dimple, unfortunately. For a whole section of this book, I found Twinkle to be annoying and rude, and I didn't really like how she was acting that way. It was resolved and it did hold a purpose, but I can't just forget that for a lot of this book, for a majority of this novel, she was annoying me and I couldn't really get past that. Absolutely loved our love interest Sahil. He was adorable and sweet. But yeah, Sahil was adorable. So overall I enjoyed the story. It was fun fluff. It was an enjoyable story. I just didn't love it as much as When Dimple Met Rishi. I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars. Ooh, we have another tough one coming up that I have a lot to say about. So the next book that I read is Monday's Not Coming by Tiffany D. Jackson. Oh my lord. Oh my lord. So I just want to mention that the only tabs in this book are blue and green. If you aren't familiar with my tabbing system, blue means sad and green is angry. Let me tell you, this book was such a hard and emotional read, and it really packed in a punch and like completely destroyed me from the inside out. So I really felt for our main character Claudia, because throughout the whole story she is feeling lonely and left behind by her best friend, because Monday's her best friend and Monday has just out of the blue gone missing, and Claudia thinks, oh, maybe she just doesn't want to be my friend anymore. She just felt very lonely without her best friend, and I could relate to her to that extent of not having a best friend anymore and having to kind of deal with that, because I definitely have gone through that. I definitely relate to how lonely and isolated she felt without having her best friend by her side to kind of keep her company and like just be a friend, and I could relate to her to that extent, not to the full extent of what she was going through, but yeah, I could definitely feel for her. My heart definitely broke many times throughout this book. I'm not going to say specifically why, because that's spoilers. If you've read this book, you can feel free to DM me on like Twitter or Instagram or something and talk about it with me, because no one I know has read this book, so I have no one to talk to about it. I did talk to my family after reading it though, because I was so like, what did I just read? But my heart was broken so many times throughout this book. It just was cracked open, and like, oh my god, I want to cry just thinking about, do you see the tears? Oh my god. I can't imagine having to deal with a situation like this one, with a best friend missing and not knowing what's happening and trying to piece it all together while no one else seems to care about it. This book took such a turn at the end that I wasn't expecting, and I can't talk too much about it because spoilers, but it broke my heart so bad, and I was so disgusted by what had happened and the total like disregard and like total like not caring, like nonchalant attitude towards what had happened boiled my blood. I was so angry and disgusted, and I know that this kind of thing happens in real life, which is what made it so much harder, was that I could believe it happening. It would be so much easier to deal with if it was unrealistic and like, oh, that would never happen in society, but I know that what happens in this book does happen, and I don't understand it. I will never understand it, and I was just so heartbroken and destroyed by this novel. And if you can deal with the subject matter of this book, I don't even want to talk about what happens in it though, because spoilers, but I feel like there are, okay, I'm just gonna say there's trigger warnings for like physical assault and stuff like that. That's all I'm gonna say. But if you can handle a dark, disgusting, infuriating book, I feel like you should read this, because it's a very important story, and it definitely shed some light on something that I wasn't completely aware of beforehand. Very, very happy that I read this book, because now I am more informed and I know more about what goes on in some people's lives, which is so heartbreaking to think about. But I've talked about this book for long enough. This video is already 37 minutes long, and I have way more books to go through, so oh my god, this book was insane. Did I already say 4.75 out of 5? I loved this book. Then I listened to the audiobook, This Is Me by Chrissy Metz. This was another memoir. Chrissy Metz is an actress in This Is Us, my favorite show, currently on the air. But I wanted to read this because it came out, I think beginning of this year, middle of this year, I don't know. It came out quite a few months ago, and I found the audiobook on Overdrive, so I was like, hey, I'll listen to this in the car. I don't have a lot to say, but I really enjoyed learning more about Chrissy, because I knew nothing about her prior to listening to this audiobook, and I really enjoy her as an actress. I enjoy her work, and so I really loved getting to know more about her and how she came to This Is Us and all the struggles that she's gone through in her life. I really enjoyed hearing about her journey. really admire her as a person for chasing her dream and working hard for it without giving up. That really inspires me because obviously I have a dream to be an author, and it kind of like gives me hope that if I don't give up and if I just keep working hard that I will achieve it just like she achieved her dream. I loved her narrating the book. I love her voice for some reason. I don't know, I just really enjoy her voice, and so her narrating her own words just really felt nice. I really enjoyed it. I gave this one a 4 out of 5. It was enjoyable. I'm going to talk about these ones in bulk because I've been talking for way too long, but I read the rest of the Soul Screamers series by Rachel Vincent. So I reread books 4 through 6. So that is My Soul to Steal, If I Die, and Before I Wake. And I read this whole volume, which is the last book with All My Soul, and then the 3 little short stories, Fearless, Niederwald, and Last Request. So I'm going to specifically talk about this one in a minute because this is the only one that I read for the first time. But the 3 books that I reread, really enjoyed rereading them. I'm really glad that I still enjoy these books after having read them so long ago when I was like 12, 13. I think I was 12. So I'm glad that the story still held up for me. I still really enjoyed the characters. I really enjoyed the story. I gave My Soul to Steal 4 out of 5. I gave If I Die, I gave this one 4.5. And I gave Before I Wake 4.75. What I realized while rereading these books is that I remembered practically nothing. I remembered like some big things, but not really, so it kind of felt like I was reading them for the first time. But I really enjoyed them. With All My Soul, which is the final book, I wasn't emotionally prepared to read this book. I wasn't ready to say goodbye to these characters. I wasn't ready for it to end. And I definitely wasn't ready for what happened in this book because holy crap, it was a roller coaster ride. I totally cried during this book. I don't think I was fully expecting that, but I 100% cried many times throughout this whole book. I just got so emotional at so many different parts, and it's insane. Like, I'm such a sensitive, emotional person, it's not even funny. But I am so happy that I can finally say that I finished this series. It was one of my reading goals for the year, so I'm so happy that I can finally say that I finished it, and I'm also extremely glad that I decided to reread the other books before getting to this one because I would have been completely lost in this book. This one 5 out of 5. It's definitely my favorite from the whole series. I also read the short stories in this one and I didn't rate them, but I really enjoyed them all. And my favorite was Last Request, which is the last one. Okay, so I don't want to talk about this one too much, but I listened to The Lost Hero by Rick Riordan on audiobook. I didn't really enjoy this book all that much. I didn't really care what was going on, and I mean there were some funny parts. I enjoyed the characters. As with all Rick Riordan books, I always enjoy the characters more than I enjoy the actual story. I just tend to not care what the hell's going on. I just care about the characters and the interactions they have with each other. The Heroes of Olympus series is going to be a very similar experience to the Percy Jackson series, where I just don't fully enjoy them as much as everyone else does. I gave The Lost Hero 3 out of 5 and I don't really want to talk about it, so let's move on. I then listened to another audiobook. I listened to Dull Bones by Holly Black. I was in a creepy mood because I'm really excited for Halloween, and so I decided to pick it up because I saw it on Overdrive, and so I listened to it. It was enjoyable. It just didn't fully captivate me. I didn't really care about the characters. I found some of them to be very annoying. I didn't really care what happened to them or anything like that. The actual story itself was quite interesting, and that kind of intrigued me, so that's kind of what saved this book for me, is that I enjoyed some of the characters and some of their interactions, but mainly I just found the actual story with like the doll to be interesting, and I wanted to know what happened with her. Yeah, but it would have been a lot better if I actually enjoyed the characters that the story followed. So I gave this one a 2.75 out of 5. It just wasn't anything special in my opinion. Okay, the last book, the 16th book of August. I read Dumplin' by Julie Murphy. So I wanted to reread this so I could read Put In by Julie Murphy. And so I listened to this partially on audiobook, but then my audiobook expired. So I read the last little chunk of it, like last 100 and something pages of it, I think, physically. I didn't really enjoy the audiobook, so I am glad that I finished it as a physical read. I just didn't like the narrator. I didn't like the way she read it, and I don't know. I really don't like the way she read Bo. at all, and now I can't like unhear that voice. I've talked about this book so much on my channel that I feel like everyone already knows that I love it. It's one of my favorite books of all time. I love these characters, I love the story, I love the theme of body positivity. Oh my god, I love it so much, and I love the friendships in this book, and the relationship. Beau is everything. I love this book so much. If you haven't read it, read it. It's everything to me. The next time I read this, I will definitely be annotating it, and I cannot wait. Okay, this one was obviously a 5 out of 5. Why am I holding it upside down? Ooh. So thank you all for watching. That is the end of my very, very long wrap-up. I hope that next month is definitely not going to be as long, because I haven't even finished a book yet, and we're already like halfway into the month almost, so fun. But thank you guys for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. Comment down below what books you read in August, or if you've read any of these books and want to discuss them with me, because I'd really love to do that with you guys, especially if you read Monday's Not Coming. Please DM me so I can talk to somebody about this, because no one of my friends has read it. I need to talk about it. Subscribe if you have not yet already, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.